Who were the Targaryens, and where did they come from? The Targaryens were a family of dragon lords from the old and ancient lands of Valyria. Valyria was known as the center of civilization and the greatest city in the known world of A Song of Ice and Fire. In Valyria, there lived Aenar Targaryen, who had one maiden daughter named Daenerys, who one day foresaw the destruction and downfall of Valyria that would one day take place. She was forever known as Daenerys the Dreamer after that day. Upon hearing of her vision, Aenar gathered all his family, wealth, dragons, and slaves and fled to the most western outpost of Valyria at the time, the desolate island of Dragonstone, far out in the narrow sea. Other Valyrian families called Aenar and his kin cowards for fleeing, but 12 years later, when the Doom of Valyria finally came, the Targaryens were the only dragon lords to remain. The most notable allies of the Targaryens at the time were the Velaryons of Driftmark and the Celtigars of Claw Isle, who were lesser houses also native to Valyria. The Velaryon and Celtigar ships controlled much of the narrow sea, while the Targaryens controlled the skies from their dragons. Daenerys' brother and husband, Gaemon Targaryen, followed as the Lord of Dragonstone after Aenar's death, and later became known as Gaemon the Glorious. Now, and bear with me for a second, Gaemon had a son and daughter, Aegon and Olenna, who ruled after his passing. They then had two sons, Magon and Orys. Orys had three sons, Aelix, Balon, and Damian. Damian then had a son, Arion, who ultimately ruled Dragonstone. Now, we arrive at our Aegon, Aegon the Conqueror, who was the only son of Arion and the Lady Valenna of House Velaryon. Aegon was a middle child and had two sisters, one older being named Visenya and the younger being Rhaenys. As we know, the Targaryens very often married brother and sister to keep their bloodline pure, and so this would continue down with Aegon as he married his elder sister Visenya. However, Aegon also desired his younger sister Rhaenys and would go on to marry her too. The people will go on to say Aegon would wed Visenya out of duty and tradition, and Rhaenys out of his own love and desire. Visenya was known to be as much as a warrior as Aegon, as she trained as a child alongside him. She would grow to often wear ringmail and would wield the Valyrian sword Dark Sister. People who knew her closest would describe her as serious, unforgiving, and stern. She was also known to experiment with various poisons and even dark sorceries. Their younger sister Rhaenys served as the opposite to Visenya. Rhaenys was known to be curious, playful, and impulsive. She loved music, poetry, dancing, and flying most of all. She spent more time on Dragonback than both Visenya and Aegon combined. It's no wonder why Aegon desired to be with her more than his elder sister Visenya. Now, Aegon himself was also known to be a formidable warrior. He wielded the Valyrian blade Blackfire and was skilled in its use. Despite his talents, however, he would never ride in tourneys or compete in melees. He would also never fly for fun, and would only ever fly on his dragon, Balerion, to ride to battle or to quickly travel. Aegon carried a commanding and ruling presence, and because of that, he had no close friends except that of Orys Baratheon. The two became close when they were young, and stayed as friends ever since. When he later became king, Aegon left a lot of the tasks to his sisters and small council, but he would step in and take command when he felt it was needed. Aegon would be harsh to rebels and traitors, but would also be kind to allies and former enemies who bent to his rule. As we know, the Targaryens were dragon riders, and so each of them had their own dragon. Aegon would ride Balerion, the Black Dread. Balerion was by far the largest and only survivor of the dragons that came with Aenar when the Targaryens first came to Dragonstone all those years ago. Visenya would ride Vhagar, and lastly Rhaenys would ride Meraxes. Vhagar and Meraxes were not born until way later when they were hatched on Dragonstone itself. As time went on, Aegon and his sisters would go on to conquer Westeros and establish their dynasty, but that is a topic for another time with many stories in itself. Thank you for watching.